So you need to choose one investment strategy. Obviously, for me, I chose property. So you need to choose what investment strategy you need to do. And you need to plan when there's still time. Sometimes we leave things so late in our life. And that's when if you act out of desperation, things do not work quickly. So start planning for your life today. Start planning for your future today. Start planning for your retirement now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Black Wealth Connect. I'm your host, Fabrice Ominko, and today we have a very special guest. And actually, before I introduce him, I want to say welcome to season 2 because, from season 1, it has been a success, and I look forward to this journey in season 2 again. So my guest that I'm about to introduce is also an author. He's written the 10X Property System, How to Amass 10 Properties in 10 Years and Retire Sooner. From a registered nurse to a multi-million-dollar property investor, this is a very inspiring story because I did see my guest at an Afropreneur Summit, which was a couple of months ago, and I was very inspired by his journey and everything that he was able to achieve just by listening to him talk on that day. So I think this episode is going to be very inspiring for a lot of people that are going to watch this, and hopefully there's so much that they can learn from this episode, and I'm definitely going to learn a lot. So without any further ado, I want to introduce Sanders Muleya. How are you today?
I am fine, Fabrice. Thank you very much for having me here. I am honored and humbled to actually tell my story so that it will inspire many and maybe change so many lives.
Now, awesome. Now, thanks for that. So, Sanders, what I want to do is I want to talk about your childhood. Are you able to elaborate, just how your upbringing was, your parents, just the family dynamic, if you're able to break that down?
So I am from Zimbabwe. I was actually born there and I grew up there. I am from a very poor family. My father was a peasant farmer, and my mom was actually never employed. So she was just staying at home and actually raising us up. So growing in the remote areas of a place called Binga in Matebele North is one of the poorest areas in Zimbabwe. So I went to both primary and secondary schools in Binga, but it was a tough experience, and my father could not afford school fees because he was not working, and whatever was being produced from the farms was not enough to then sell and actually be able to pay for school fees. So to actually manage to go to school, I used to cover around 30 kilometers each day, 15 going and 15 coming back on barefoot because I couldn't afford a uniform either. So to pay for my school fees, I had to work in my father's farms when the schools were actually closed. That's how I managed to raise money for school fees. So yeah, that's my upbringing. I persevered until I actually completed my year 12. And surprisingly, I came up with a very, very, very good grade. So that's pretty much about my upbringing.
Wow, that's very deep because obviously, it was almost traumatizing for you, growing up in poverty. What was your mindset, growing up during that time, and especially you coming to Australia?
So before I even came to Australia, I actually, after completing school, I then trained as a registered nurse back in Zimbabwe. So I was working as a registered nurse there, and then I got married, and I actually got 3 kids that were all raised up in Zimbabwe. But because of the economic situation that happened in our country, Zimbabwe was one of the richest countries in Africa. It was actually called the breadbasket of Africa. So because of political turmoil and things that were out of our control, the economy just collapsed. So this is when I actually realized that there was no future for my family. There was no future for my kids. So this is when I thought of applying for jobs abroad so that I could, raise my kids in a better way. So I applied for jobs not only in Australia. I tried the UK, and all other countries like New Zealand. But I was lucky that the first country that responded was actually Australia. So that's how I then migrated.
So yeah, now definitely I can understand exactly where it is that you're coming from, Sanders, because my parents also went through some of the same issues around poverty and things like that. What I want to kind of understand is what was the transition like, especially coming from a place like Zimbabwe to Australia for your family, and also even just for yourself. What was the how was that to adapt to this country?
So before talking about adaptation in Australia, actually, for me to be able to raise airfares, to be able to be registered with the Australian Nursing Council, to get a working visa, I had to sell pretty much everything that I owned in Zimbabwe, except my family, of course. And then I had to travel first. So I left my family back home. And then I had to travel first. And then I was here for 1 year. And then I raised enough money to actually bring my family. And I remember arriving into Australia with only $50 in my pocket. And I didn't know anyone and I didn't know where to start, but somehow something had to be done. So 1 year later, my family joined me. And then I was lucky that my wife is a registered nurse as well. So then that's how we both started working. And obviously my kids, it was very difficult for them to adapt to a new country. But for kids, it looks like it's not as hard as when you are an adult. But the most difficult part was because of the lifestyle and the way life is in Australia. So my wife and myself obviously had 2 jobs. And we also had to make sure that there was someone looking after the kids at home. So when one was coming out, the other one was actually coming in to make sure that the kids are actually catered for. And up to today, I am surprised how we didn't divorce.
Yeah, that's amazing how you say that, Sanders, because that resonates with me a lot too. Because my parents, at the same time, they were going through the same issues that you and your wife were going through. It was almost like a revolving door in my house, because my mum had come back from work, then my dad left, so it was almost like they never saw each other, and to some extent, that also did create some sort of friction between them because who's going to take care of the kids and all those type of issues. What was the dynamic around your house at that time, and the mindset that you had to have had, especially you guys having to raise the kids? You're going to work, you're coming back, she's going to work, so you guys obviously not spending too much time with each other. What gave you the drive to go through that?
Yeah, look, for me, I think it was not about myself. It was more for my family, especially my kids. So the motivation to work harder, the motivation to go that extra mile, it was because of my family. So I knew it was something temporal. I knew it was a temporal suffering, but then I knew one day I would be maybe a better person. But then I also realized that the harder you work, the poorer you get, because it doesn't mean that getting a better job will actually change your circumstances.
Are you able to break down, just elaborate on that, just for people to fully understand?
So what I'm trying to say is, no matter how good your job is, if you don't plan around how you're gonna use the money will just come in and then actually evaporate. So you need to have a good job and then plan. So you need to do something that is outside your normal job to be able to actually prosper. I think it actually hit me a few months into Australia because I realized that the lifestyle was different from home. So back in Zimbabwe, there's a lot of social networks. You could be having an uncle or you could have brothers and sisters, whereby if you are in a bad situation financially or otherwise, you always go to them and they will assist you. So here, life is different. You can only rely on what you have. And very few people who actually help you, especially if you are in financial problems. So this is when I realized that surely something must be done. What then will happen if one day I lose my job or maybe I am no longer able to work? So these were things that were pushing me to the limit to say, surely I can work, but there should be something better that I can actually do to look after myself when I actually retire. And I never thought I would actually do something outside nursing. So what really inspired me, as I said, was realizing that, I actually have to look after myself and my entire family. So I looked at different investment strategies, and the one that came to mind was property investing. So why? Because when I was back home, I actually managed to build my first property by transporting or building material on a bus. And I thought if I could do this in a very hard way, surely this could be done here where I could see resources everywhere. But like any other person, because I didn't know anyone who could help me, I tried to seek for information from friends and family or people that I knew, but they were telling me things that were not real, things that they've not done themselves. So then the first property I bought obviously was my family home to live in, because I wanted to bring to actually bring my kids in a very nice environment. So that was bought in 2006, 2 years into Australia. But then I said, look, I think I can achieve more. So without knowledge again, I went and bought my first investment. And this first investment was actually a failure because number one, I didn't know what I was doing. I just walked into a suburb and then bought a property that I didn't know whether it was the right value. And then only to realize that down the track, I bought it $100,000 above market value. And it was so heavily negatively geared that I could not maintain the two loans, meaning my home and the new investment. And to make matters worse, the two properties were cross-collateralized. So that made the situation even worse.
When we talk about some of the mistakes that you've done and how you've elaborated on them, like obviously having an owner-occupied property and then buying an investment property that was negative gearing and that was taking money out of your pocket and obviously creating financial damage towards you. Are you able to just explain to people what negative gearing is and also what cross-collateralization is?
So cross-collateralization is when you use another property to actually buy another one.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that means to the bank, they are two separate properties, but they are all linked together.
Yeah.
So meaning that if you want to sell one or something goes wrong on the other property, they still have to value the other one. So pretty much they are not independent.
Correct.
So they are locked in together, and that is a very, very serious problem.
And obviously then when you got yourself into a better financial position, are you able to just explain to people what positive gearing is?
Negative gearing is the opposite of positive gearing. So negative gearing is when you start a business to lose money. Okay. Positive gearing is when you start a business to actually gain money. So for example, if you buy a property for $500,000 and it's rented for $400 a week, there's that $100 gap. And then that means that every month, instead of the tenant paying for everything, you have to fork your own money to actually pay for that property. So then that means it makes you remain in your job because you have to work to actually be able to repay the loan. So then positive gearing is totally the opposite, where You buy a property for 500,000 and it's rented for 550 a week or $600 a week. So that way, the tenant pays pretty much everything, all the expenses that are associated with that investment. And then you concentrate on saving more and actually acquiring more properties. So that is the difference. So when you buy an investment, depending on what it is, whether it's a house, whether it's a unit, or whether it's strata title or stuff like that. So the expenses that are associated with an investment, number one is the mortgage repayments, obviously. Number two could be insurance. There could be council rates, there could be water rates, there could be electricity. So there's all those costs that are associated with those properties. You have to pay them yourself. But imagine if all those costs were then catered for and paid by the tenant.
So what I want to do is I want to focus on not calling them failures and calling them lessons, because I feel like with everything that you do that might have not turned out the way you wanted it to, can also be a lesson. So I just want to know from all the situations that you had gone through, and especially dealing with this property that was negative gearing, what is it that you were able to learn from that situation?
So I actually wasn't aware that I made that problem until I attempted to buy property number 3. So that's when the bank said, look, you are actually overstretched. The properties that you have bought, you cannot borrow money and actually buy more. So that's when I started asking myself, okay, what then has actually gone wrong? They said, look, it is still doable, but you need to find an extra job maybe to actually, so that your income is actually better. And then I thought, okay, if I continue this way, then I'm actually putting myself in a very precarious situation. So this is when I stopped doing anything and then started educating myself. So I spent almost 3 years just on education alone. And up to today, I never stop learning. So I've spent close to about $100,000 just on property education alone. I started traveling throughout Australia in different states and talking to people, talking to different professionals, learning about the Australian property market, learning about the different strategies that you can actually use to invest. And then when I was confident, when I was armed with all this knowledge, that's when then I went and revisited what had actually gone wrong. So step number 1 was to sell the property that was negatively geared. And we lost about $30,000 on it. But at least that was a breakthrough for me to be able to actually start again. After paying the bank and paying the real estate agents,
Correct.
So with all the money that we used from our own pocket, then we were short by $30,000. So that means we lost $30,000.
So Sanders, what I want you to elaborate on is just some of the courses that you took, because for the viewers that are watching this episode, and that might want to get into property investing and things like that, is there any courses that you're able to recommend, or could you elaborate on maybe a course that really stuck out to you and really helped you get into the situation that you are in today?
Look, because I was working as a nurse with 2 jobs. And I had limited time, but however, I had to do it. This is what happens in life. If you really focus and you want something, it depends how badly you want it.
Correct.
So the first thing I did was just reading books, simple books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then from there, I started researching for, seminars, people that actually do online courses or people that teach people how to actually invest. So I did a lot of courses from renovations, property developments, commercial property purchases. And then I really immersed myself in podcasts, books, and whatever I read, I never stopped practicing. So this is the key. You can read and have all that theoretical knowledge, but until you actually use it, you have to continue using it, and then do not be scared of making mistakes. But as long as you don't repeat the same mistakes again, the chances are that each time you actually get better and yeah. So there's so many courses that I attended and actually did very well. Yeah, that's how then I said, okay, with all this information now, I need to go onto the market and actually start utilizing what I have actually learned.
Yeah, definitely. So now, and I'm glad that you brought up Rich Dad Poor Dad, because to me that book actually changed my life. It was very inspiring. Some of the stuff that I gained from that book, I still implement in my life today, and I think that a lot of people can definitely gain so much for that book. I even recommended that book to many of my friends to be able to just kind of figure out different strategies on how to focus on money and things like that. So was there, when we talk about books and, podcasts and all that, was there a specific book that you read that inspired you? Are you able to talk about that?
I don't think it's pretty much about a book because it's so many books that I can't really comprehend what I've actually gone through. Yeah. But I think it's about mindset. It's about meeting the right people. I think I can't say I got rid of my best friends. So all I did was sort of cutting the network and aligning myself with like-minded people that had done better stuff than what I had actually done. And then obviously attending seminars. So yeah, I think I did about probably 6 to 7 different educational seminars and just meeting people all the time and then learning from those different people.
Now, also, and Sanders, you know what I love about like what you just mentioned about having the right people around you, because even in my personal life, just being able to have the right people in my life has kind of got me to where I am at today. And I know from some of the mistakes that I've gained, or some of the mistakes that I've made in my life, and as we don't call them mistakes, we call them lessons, just some of the things that I've learned just from being around the wrong people and the type of energy that brings into your life. So what I wanted to ask you is, how important do you think it is to have the right people around you in your life for you to be able to get to wherever you need to get to?
So, look, I'll just give an example, and I'm not demeaning anyone here.
No, please.
So, what I'm saying, I've been a nurse myself for 30 years, and if we meet as nurses in a group, whether it's on a party or we are having a birthday or we're sitting somewhere and discussing. So the major things that we're gonna discuss there is about how good or bad our job is, what mistakes we have made, maybe doing degrees in this and that. Like it really doesn't change our dimension because we are all the same. We are discussing about the same topics every day.
Yeah.
But if you then take another page and you align yourself with people that are doing stuff that you like to do. So we are talking about property here. So obviously you need to find those people that have actually succeeded. And then you learn from them how they've actually done it. And that way it is quicker, because you are using someone's expertise, someone who has already made mistakes, and you are only there to tap from them. So this is what I've actually learned, and I've actually found that it is very, 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 it actually works very well. Those people, when you meet them, they will inspire you.
Yeah.
And then if you vice versa, if you meet someone that doesn't have any drive or any egos or stuff like that, they're gonna drain you. And you actually, that's how you end up saying probably what I'm doing is actually wrong.
Wrong, yeah. Now that's okay. Now that's awesome, Zenders. Are you able to identify or specifically say, is there anybody that has motivated you to be where you are today? Is there one specific person that you're able to talk about?
Look, as I said, there's so many strategies in property investing, from renovations to off the plan purchases, house and land packages. It could be, developments. It could be land subdivisions. So
what was the strategies that you?
So I went on to learn all those, but I was looking for one single strategy that I could use because you can't be a jack of all trades. You need to sort of nail one that you learn and then perfect it. So this is when I thought, out of all these strategies, which strategies am I actually picking? So I went and chose property development. So from then on, from 2010 up to 2015, which was a 5-year time frame, I managed to purchase 15 properties using that development strategy.
In 5 years?
Yes. So this is when I thought, okay, if I can do this, it's even better than my nursing job. I'm from a poor country and I can do all this by myself. And then I wanted more. And then I had to learn more. So then I realized that I would rather spend more time doing property developments than actually doing anything else.
And Sanders, I'm very inspired by a lot of the stuff that you've been able to achieve, but are you able to break down, like, what was it that you actually had to implement for you to be able to gain 15 properties?
So number one, I chose a location. I researched every area that I wanted to invest in.
In Australia?
Yes.
Okay.
And I chose a few locations where I knew I could actually make money.
Locations.
So I choose New South Wales,
Okay.
Queensland, and Tasmania. Those are the 3 states that I chose to do my developments in.
Okay.
For me, I know they are geographically in different areas, but I can fly within half an hour to actually go there and inspect and see my projects going on. So to come to 15 properties at one stage, I could have 3 projects or 2 projects or 5 projects going at once. So let's say it's a duplex or I'm building 3. My strategy there was whatever I build, if it's a duplex, I sell 1 and keep 1. If it's a triplex, which is 3, I always sell 2 and keep 1. If it's 4, then I'll sell 2 and keep 2. So it's always, maintaining that strategy of accumulation. But whatever money I use to get into that project, if it's $300,000, I'll get my money back and then maybe end up with a profit of 100,000 or 200,000. So now I started with 300, I've got 400 or maybe 500. So then I keep on doing it and actually repeating it. So I've got a brand new property that has got a new tenant, which is neutral or positively geared. And the bank loves it because, they know I'm not negatively geared. So I'm not losing money.
Mm-hmm.
So each time I wake up in the morning, there's money getting into my bank account. So that's why I realized that positive gearing is far, far better than negative gearing. And I didn't have time to lose.
So yeah, when you talk about the duplexes, Sanders, I think because it's very interesting, the strategy that you've taken. But what I want to ask is, and what a lot of people are going to ask is, how are you able to actually service these loans? Because for me, coming from banking and having the experience of being a credit assessor, and credit assessor to the viewers is basically someone that assesses the application, whether we choose to decline the application, approve the application. For you to be able to service these duplexes, when you talk about having 15 properties, what was your strategy around servicing these properties?
So look, that's a nice question. But because I had armed myself with a lot of knowledge, not only on property investing, but also how loans work and how the banking system works. So number one, and I knew this was a temporal setback. It wasn't going to be a long haul. So to service the loans, number one, I had 2 jobs. My wife had 2 jobs. And then on top of that, remember, whatever we were constructing and keeping was positive cash flow. So the income from there was also calculated as if it is part of our salary. So we were not negatively geared. So we are not losing money. And remember, it's just a temporal setback for 12 months or 8 to 12 months when you are actually building. So that loan will be high, but once you offload it, you sell 1 and keep 1, that loan drops. Mm. And then because the rent covers pretty much everything and we are left with extra cash coming into our bank account. So the bank views that as extra income. So that's how we were able to actually do that.
Beautiful. Okay, that makes sense. So obviously your wife having 2 jobs, you having 2 jobs, and then plus properties are positive gearing, and all that income is also being factored into your salary. Now that makes a lot of sense, because I think servicing is one of the hardest things. And when I say servicing, I'll elaborate on that. So servicing basically means your affordability, how the bank is able to see it from their perspective on how you can afford all these properties. Because you can either be in deficit or you can be in positive. So basically, with Sanders' income, working 2 jobs, his wife working 2 jobs, and all those properties bringing in income, when we look at it from a banking perspective and we assess the application, we can see that Sanders and his wife, plus those properties, are able to then service the property. They're in a positive situation to then go ahead and buy other properties. So that completely makes sense. So when you talk about the duplexes, what was it about the duplexes that caught your eyes? I know you have done a lot of research, but there might be people out there that are looking at purchasing just normal residential, just freestanding house. What was it about the duplexes that caught your eye?
So it is not only duplexes. So we, like, for now, we do anything from a duplex to a 6 townhouse development. But duplexes are key for me because, number one, there is actually less risk, there is less money involved, and the time frames for you to buy the land and construct is very short. It is a residential loan. It's not a commercial loan. So servicing is actually very easy, because when you get into commercial, it gets more complex. And then, so that's why I love duplexes.
Yeah.
And when I get into duplexes, what I'm saying is, instead of building 1 house, I'm building 2 houses. And my idea is not to lose what I have. So any money that I have to start construction, I should make sure that when I sell at the end of the project, I get my money back, and then probably with a bit of profit. So then that's why I love duplexes.
You love duplexes.
Yeah, because vice versa, if I do a 4 townhouse development, in as much as the profits are larger, but it takes longer.
So when you talk about the developments, about the 4 townhouses, because as you mentioned, you like duplexes, which is only 2, right?
So to get it clear, a duplex can be a townhouse.
Yeah, 2.
And 3 can be a townhouse. 4 can be a townhouse. Yeah. So they are all townhouses. The only difference is the number.
The number, okay.
Yes. So if you are building 2, which is a duplex, it's residential lending.
Yeah.
If you are building 3 townhouses, it's residential lending. The moment you hit 4, it then becomes commercial lending, which is more complex.
So what are the risks when you're going into building four townhouses? Like what are some of the risks that you have to deal with then?
So the risk there is, number one, the bank want to look at your expertise.
Okay.
Because the lending changes. So it shifts from residential lending into commercial. So instead of you borrowing 80%, it then drops to 70% or 65%. So you need to put more money into the deal.
Okay.
So that's one of the risks. And then it takes time to actually build. So instead of the normal 12 months, that deal could spill into 18 months or even 2 years. Yeah. So So I mean, if you've got the capacity to do it, that's okay. But then for me, I'm more looking at the turnaround time to say, for a duplex, it's a quick turnaround time. I might make the same money anyway. So that's how I actually like duplexes versus building more.
Oh, okay, awesome. So what advice would you give to people that are trying to, follow your journey, when we talk about all this stuff? And we're definitely going to dive into your book very soon and have you explain, what some of the strategies are. I know that you've said one, but just what your book, specifically, like the meaning behind it and some of the information that you've put into this book. We're definitely going to elaborate on that. But what advice would you give to people that are wanting to build a portfolio in property?
So number one, you should have a goal. Without a goal, you won't achieve anything. So what I mean by that is, if you don't plan anything, you earn a good salary and the money will just come and go.
Yeah.
So you need to choose one investment strategy. Obviously, for me, I chose property. So you need to choose what investment strategy you need to do. And you need to plan when there's still time. Sometimes we leave things so late in our lives. And that's when if you act out of desperation, things do not work quickly. So start planning for your life today. Start planning for your future today. Start planning for your retirement now. And most importantly, you need to use professionals. Do not be scared to pay money to pay professionals for you to actually mitigate risk, because you are not using $100 to invest. You are using thousands and thousands of dollars, and you are using bank money. So always use trusted professionals, and then that way you are likely to actually succeed quicker. And do not procrastinate. Procrastination is I call it a disease, because it ties you to a chair. You can't move. You plan this, I won't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. You give excuses every day of your life. There's no perfect time. There's no perfect storm. You just have to start somewhere.
Now that's excellent. Yeah, because overthinking sometimes, and like you said, with the excuses, can then be like, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. That tomorrow could turn into 1 year. That 1 year could turn into 5 years. Then 10 years, you look back and you can regret those things to some extent. So yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. So let's dive into your book, because this is amazing. Just based on everything that you've learned, what inspired you, first of all, to actually put a book together?
So what inspired me to write a book is because I suffered so much. I made so many mistakes, which some of them we didn't even talk about. So I was saying, there are people out there who are actually willing to invest, but they are scared or they are making mistakes. So I thought some people shouldn't go through what I went through. And therefore, I thought if I document it in a book, my story from where I started to where I am now, and also incorporating all the strategies that you use and how you can actually start investing. So I thought if I put that in a book, then it will simplify things and it will help other people invest well. So this is what inspired me to actually write that book. And the plan was really, it really came to mind when I was thinking of retiring from nursing. And then I thought, well, I should show people that this is actually doable. So that's why I wrote that book, to say, if me as a migrant could do it, under such circumstances, anyone could actually do it.
Anyone can do it. Yeah. And like I say, I'm very inspired by you. And it's amazing you talk about the failures. And we did say we're going to, earlier in the episode, we did say we're going to talk about some of your failures. And you mentioned one. Before we dive deep in the book and have you explain more in detail about the book, are you able to maybe list maybe two? What were two of the failures that you went through, or something that was really big that you learned from, that you feel like you weren't able to manage at the time?
Yeah, look, the first one was the major one, but after that there were some mistakes that were done. For instance,
not failures, sorry, mistakes.
So maybe, for example, hiring the wrong professionals, or investing in wrong areas, not being able to do much market research and data analysis. So those are things that were actually coming up. But for me, it was a learning process.
Yeah.
And I never gave up. So every mistake I made, it was more of a challenge. And then to say, okay, this is a challenge, but I can actually work around it. So anything that comes in life, there will always be challenges. There will always be issues. There will always be problems, but it depends how you react from them and how you actually move forward.
Yeah. And it's amazing, because you did say earlier, and I just want to say this again for the viewers, a lot of the mistakes that you had learned over time when you went and studied, you put a lot of money into studying and researching, you were able to fully understand where those mistakes came from, and you were able to kind of learn from that and then implement things to be able to make sure that you don't make those mistakes again. So that was now that's very inspiring. So yeah, so obviously you've mentioned why you've written the book. Now, are you able to tell us just briefly what the book represents? I know you talked about some of the failures, and you talked about, like if somebody like you being an immigrant, that you're able to achieve these things. What other things can people gain from the book?
So it's very hard to summarize the whole book because it has got a lot of so many chapters in there.
Yeah.
But key there is really number one about my story, telling you about how everything happened from day one up to today, and then secondly, the different strategies that are there in terms of property investing. So obviously, the 10x property system pretty much says how you can buy 10 properties in 10 years and be able to retire comfortably. Why 10 properties? 10 properties, the idea there is after you have acquired them, down the line, when you're preparing for retirement, you sell 5 and then leave the other 5 debt-free. That's how you can actually retire well. So then you live on the income that is actually coming from those five properties. So the book talks more about positive gearing rather than negative gearing. Why we favor positive gearing versus negative gearing. How you can get started to invest if you are new into the property game, and obviously different strategies that people are using, either myself or clients that use our services. So we promote positive gearing. People use to get started. People use, they use either super or they use equity from their existing homes or existing properties, or they come up together, they do joint ventures. So all those strategies are there to teach you to say there's not only one source of income that can actually help you start investing.
But there's many strategies.
Yes. And then there's also teaches you about mistakes that people make in property investing and how you can actually mitigate them. All right. So it's a range of stuff and why people don't even think of investing, which is procrastination. So there's a chapter there that talks mostly about procrastination and how you can actually fight it and then avoid it altogether.
So yeah, definitely. So the 10x. So the 10x property system, how to amass 10 properties in 10 years and retire sooner. This is an amazing book. And look, I think that what you've talked about today, and especially for people that are wanting to get into property investment, whether you're a couple, whether you're just somebody on your own that's trying to build a portfolio, where are some of the places that people are able to reach out to you, Sanders, and get more information about how to work with you to be able to potentially build a portfolio and hopefully retire sooner?
So before we get into this, if you buy this book and do nothing, I'll be amazed because it is so simplified. So many books are full of jargon and language that you can understand. This book has been so simplified that even a grade 5-year-old can actually read and understand what is actually there. So we are using those strategies ourselves as a business. Our clients are using those same strategies in that book, and we find that it's working very well. So if, however, you want help and you want to start and do it professionally without making further mistakes, you can reach us in so many different ways. So one is obviously purchasing the book, which will be having all our details in there. Number 2, we've got a website, which is www.msisaproperty.com.au. We've got an email there, info@msisaproperty.com.au. There's also our phone number, and we've got Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the other social media channels where you can actually see what other people are doing and what other people are saying, and the testimonials about all their achievements, so that you can really see that people are not just sitting there. People are really serious. And we do a lot of, obviously, podcasts. Now and again, we do Zoom seminars, we do live events. We are there to teach people, because my concern is there are people out there who want to invest, but somehow they don't know where to start. So we are here to actually help you. And if you think you need help, we are just a phone call away.
100%. And we're definitely going to put all the links for people that are wanting to purchase the book, and also all the links like LinkedIn and Facebook, and in many ways to be able to reach Sanders and your company, which is awesome, because you're everywhere. And I've seen it before on LinkedIn, and I can attest to this. There's been so many testimonials of people that have been able to achieve a lot of success from some of this, with the strategies that you talk about. I've seen many of that online. So I can definitely say that it has inspired me a lot. And I've told you personally, I'm going to reach out to you very soon, because I'm in the process of obviously trying to build a portfolio and things like that. I want to leave the podcast with one thing, one question for yourself, which I think, and this is the reason why I started Black Wealth Connect, because it's about ownership, and it's about people not only building a portfolio, but owning things. It's not just property, but it's just ownership within the African community. But we're going to talk about the property. How important is it how important to you is ownership overall? Whether it's property or just anything in general, how important do you think that is?
Look, I always say to everyone that I meet that use your job as a stepping stone to actually creating wealth.
Yeah.
Okay. The problem we have is, once you have a secure job, you think it's a secure job and that's the end of the world. You should think beyond that. So I can't speak about other investments, but we are talking about property here today.
Correct. Yeah.
Property has changed my life. It has changed my entire family's life situation. From poverty to being a multi-million-dollar property investor is really amazing. Obviously it's through sheer hard work and determination. But where there's a will, there's a way. If you want something, it depends how badly you want it. You will always get it. So property is one of those things that will actually make you wealthy, and you can actually retire comfortably. Because I don't want to retire one day, and look back and having achieved nothing. So, when you retire, it doesn't mean that, life ends there. That's when you actually need more money. So where are you going to get the money from?
Yeah.
Some people say, I'll use my super, I'll use that, but how much super really is that? Most of us have got 200K, maybe 300,000 maximum in our super accounts. Is that enough to look after you? So when you retire, that's when you realize you still need to pay medical bills. If you are still driving, you still need to put fuel in your car. You still need to pay for electricity. You pay for all these expenses. And most importantly, when you retire, that's when you need to enjoy life and actually travel.
Correct.
So I don't want to see a situation where I stop work today and then the following day I am living in a very poverty bottom line.
Correct. And also relying on pension payment, which is it's not enough. Obviously, if you want to travel and you want to do things, that's exactly where property comes in. Because as you mentioned, if you use a lot of the strategies from your book, all you're going to be relying on is just income coming from properties pretty much for the rest of your life, which is one of the strategies that you talk about. So now, Sanders, I honestly, I want to say thank you very much for your time today. I think this episode has been very inspiring and for myself, and will be very inspiring for people that listen to this episode. And I think that there's so much to learn from your book, the 10X property system, how to amass 10 properties in 10 years and retire sooner. And like I said, we'll be putting all the links, and there's going to be many ways if you want to reach out to Sanders and definitely find out different strategies and work with him to be able to build a portfolio. I can't thank you enough, Sanders. Thank you very much again. And I really appreciate it, man, for giving your time today to Black Wealth Connect.
Thank you very much, Fabrice, for giving me this platform. And most importantly, the book can be found on Amazon, or there's a link where you can download a free ebook so that you can actually be educated. Education is key to everything else anyone can achieve. Thank you very much for the.
No worries. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.